Hello and welcome to Art Club. I'm going to be looking today at creating a silhouette detail to the painting we created last week. If you didn't have a look at last week's materials, what we did was we painted a sunset picture, blending the colours of acrylic paint to overlap them and create a really interesting sunset, which we're now going to start adding to with extra detail to create a silhouette picture like the one in this image. So to join Art Club, obviously you can use whatever materials you want, but I would recommend that you have a starter set of acrylic paints, drawing pencil, preferably a 2B, a rubber sharpener, and a starter set of paintbrushes, colour pencils, and oil pastels. So we're not going to be using oil pastels today. What we will be using today is we'll be using small paintbrushes. So I've got some 0 and I've got a 6 paintbrush, but we're preferably going to be using that 0 a lot. Some black acrylic paint, which I've got on my trusty cardboard palette, and also a pencil and a rubber if you need it. So just to start us off, to create the silhouette, there's loads of different types of examples of silhouette pictures that you can find online. Or if you don't want to copy one from online, you want to do your own one, then you can have a look at just the images that you'd want to have a go at drawing. So I would have a really good think about this first, because this is a more kind of like tricky bit, I would say, than the painting we did last week. Some of you might just want to go for a simple design like the balloon picture on this slide. If I just click on to the next slide along, there's lots of different other examples you might want to have a look at doing if you want something a little bit more challenging. I today am just going to do some pictures of balloons, so a nice simple outline of silhouette to keep it nice and simple, and just show you that even with simple shapes you can still be really, really effective with your artwork. You don't need to kind of have all the extra kind of texture and detail to make a nice simple painting. So to start us off, I'm going to quickly unshare my screen now. I am going to start off by drawing my picture in pencil onto my already painted background. Now, last week I did say to you, you may want to neaten up some of your edges, and I have neatened some of my edges up today already prior to this. That is completely up to you, but you do need to wait for any paint to be dry on your background before working on it at the top. You don't want it to be wet, because it will start smudging when you add your black. I'm going to be using a picture that I've got on my phone. So like I said, come prepared. You can either use a phone or you can print a picture out. It depends on kind of what you've got available to you. Or you can even have it on your computer screen while you're working. But I like it on my phone because I can literally hold it while I'm drawing my picture. So the picture of the balloons I've got here and the ones that you've seen have got several different balloons, and it's also got some trees in the background. Now I'm going to focus mainly on the balloons, and I'm actually going to have them slightly different to the picture on here. So I'm going to instead, rather than having lots of different ones, I'm going to focus on having 2 or 3, because I feel having 2 or 3 really one, it makes it more simple for you to make, but also I feel that this picture here is very, very cluttered and crowded, and actually having too many balloons can ruin the picture. So really think carefully before starting your drawing how you want to have your composition. So I'm going to put my first balloon drawing on the page, and I'm going to start off by drawing a faint outline with my pencil. When I'm sketching, I tend to do very kind of like lots of different kind of marks and not pressing too hard with a pencil. That enables me to get the outline that I want and self-correct my outline on the page without having to actually use my rubber. If I use the rubber too much, you may start tearing your paper. So I've got the outline of my kind of balloons. You can probably see a very, very faint outline. But I'm also going to start adding detail to a basket here. And obviously balloons are quite nice, easy shapes. You've kind of got like a kind of squashed circle or oval. And then I've got kind of like I would say a kind of a square or rectangle underneath it for the basket. So I've got my first balloon there, okay, which is kind of slightly off center using the rule of thirds of the frame of the picture. It's quite nice when you do a picture to have your main object slightly off center. It tends to make it look more pleasing to the eye, and it kind of makes people think you know a little bit more about what you're talking about, because it is using the rule of thirds more clearly. So I've got one balloon there, and I'm going to draw a slightly smaller one down here, I think. You can probably hear my pencil making kind of scratchy marks. That's because the acrylic paint is quite thick. Because it's nice, lustrous, thick paint, drawing on it can be quite challenging. But again, with this kind of sketching process where I'm just sketching it, rather than having kind of like, what's the word? Rather than having kind of lots of really harsh graphic-based lines that have to be very, very accurate, by using the sketching process, it just allows me to make a change to what I want and make it look more interesting later on. So I've done my second smaller balloon, which I know you guys can't see that well on my picture. And I'm going to do a third one, but this time I'm just going to do a top of a balloon coming right down at the bottom of the page. So all you're going to see is the top of the balloon as it's kind of like coming up into the sky. So there's my 3 balloons. Now, I don't know if you guys can see that very clearly, this kind of screen. I can see the video is quite pixelated, but you can probably see the outlines of my drawing there. And hopefully you can kind of, if I hold it really up close, you can kind of see that I've got more than one line for my drawing. Like I said, lots of faint sketches rather than a big, thick, bold outline. You can rub those out now, but I'm not going to worry about rubbing them out because now I'm going to be going in with my black paint, and my black paint is so dark that it's going to cover up any kind of mistakes I've made with my sketching process. So like I said to you, it's better if you use a thinner paintbrush because you get those really nice thin details in with it. But I've got a thicker paintbrush because these areas here are quite large, and it would get quite boring to kind of spend loads of time with a thin paintbrush on these areas. So I'm going to, first of all, I'm holding them both at the same time. You don't have to do that, but I like to do that because it enables me to kind of swap very quickly between the two. Hold them both at the same time. And I'm going to follow the outline of my balloon. So while I'm painting, like I was talking to you about last week, I'm following the direction of my object and keeping to that direction because that will enable the shape to be better formed. If I was painting this horizontally or vertically, yes, you'd get the job done as well, but you would also not kind of be able to, you wouldn't follow the shape, and therefore the picture wouldn't look quite as round or as accurate. It kind of gives it depth and form by doing that. So I'm painting my first coat of black paint round and round on my balloon, filling in the area. So the first top is completed. I am going to go back and add more layers of black paint to this once I've finished, just so it makes sure that the black is completely solid and you can't see any of the sunset through the black. Using my smaller brush now to add the basket. Okay, on to the next one. Again, brush strokes going circular, round and round, which is quite soothing because a round movement can be really, really kind of relaxing when you're doing your painting. You can probably see mine's going quite see-through. That's because I'm using quite a thin acrylic paint. You can get different thicknesses of your acrylic paint. This one's a particularly kind of runny, thin acrylic paint, which you may find that getting cheaper paint does achieve, but you can always build up the texture later on. Now, with my basket, I've purposely left some yellow in the background just to kind of like give you a little bit more detail and texture. That's because when I filled the first one in, it does look a bit like a black blob, which I will try and sort out later on. But because I noticed that on the first one, my second one, I am now kind of leaving that a little bit more. Then my final one down at this bottom here. Again, having this balloon in the bottom corner is using the rule of thirds, which tends to make your work look more pleasing to the eye. And although this bit is on the edge of my painting, I'm still going to make it circular to have the paint brush strokes and the texture be a more circular movement. You can see I'm filling these in pretty quickly because I want to go back in over the top, and I know my paint's quite thin. So I'm filling them in quite quickly because I know that I will be doing neater brush strokes later on. If you are doing a more detailed background, so say, for example, you wanted to put trees in the picture or maybe animals, you may want to use a thinner brush for longer, because if you're doing that, obviously you're going to need more control on your brush strokes. I wouldn't be using any water for this either, by the way. I would just be using the black paint, because any water is going to make that paint more runny and you'll start to get drips down your page, particularly if you're using an easel. If you've got it on your lap, obviously it will be less drippy. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, hopefully by this point my first layer of my balloon is more dry, and you can actually use a hairdryer to help you if it's not drying quick enough for your taste, or you can spend more time on it than obviously me doing a video. So I'm going back around it with my second layer. I've actually made it slightly higher there at the top. The reason was because I could still see my pencil sketches above the paint, so I wanted to get rid of those by adding a second layer. I'm going to neaten the quality of the shape there as well, where the paint's kind of dripped a little bit. And the beauty of balloons is that they're not accurate shapes, because obviously they're filled with air, so they're moving all the time. So you don't have to worry about having the shapes look like exactly perfect. They don't have to have complete straight lines. So if you're worried about accuracy, it is actually very easy to kind of create an accurate balloon shape without worrying about making your lines all ruler perfect, which is something that I do definitely struggle with. Just filling in the basket for the second time. Neaten up there. If you don't feel confident using paint, you could always use a black pen. That would work definitely just as well, and it does give you that little bit more control with your lines and your mark making. I'm not too happy with the way mine's gone like that. What I'm gonna do here, because it's kind of I feel it's too straight, it looks a bit more like a light bulb than a balloon basket. I'm actually gonna change the shape of my basket here to make it more of a curve rather than a straight down. Even though now I've got quite a big basket. Okay, second balloon. This one's not quite as dry as I would like it, because you can still see the paint. As I'm adding the second layer of paint, it's just moving the paint around, and that's not great. What you probably want to do in a more ideal world is to wait for that to dry a little bit longer, or like I said, use a hairdryer. If you've got a hairdryer on hand, you could then use the hairdryer to dry it a little bit quicker, because I'm going to have to now go back over mine with a third layer of paint once that's dry. Okay, and finally my big balloon. Just going to change the shape at the corner there because I'm not loving that. I'm going to try and go back over that one again, even though the paint is still quite wet. While I'm at my kitchen table, I'm going to just see if I've got any other equipment I can use to get some highlights out to these balloons, because what I want to do is I want to kind of like touch up the balloons a little bit to get some lighter bits on there too. So what I really want is kind of like a light crayon, or you could use white paint, but because I'm in my kitchen, I know I don't have the paint ready. Let's have a quick look, see. Aha, I knew I'd have some crayons, trusty crayons close by. So luckily I've got a nice white crayon here, so I'm going to go into my picture now. With that white crayon, and I'm going to use my white crayon to highlight some of the areas. Again, this is much easier to do once it's dry. I think I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop there for the moment, okay, because my paint isn't quite dry enough. But once this is dry, I'm going to go back over the top again with some white crayon to get some more highlights, particularly on this balloon, but also on the other two as well. So you've got kind of that shine of the balloon and the silhouette. I'm just going to turn my easel around a bit so you can kind of see my balloon silhouettes half finished. But what I'll do is I will finish this and I will include it as a resource with this lesson so you can see the finished picture when it's finally finished. Now, I hope you enjoyed it this week. I will be doing another video on something completely different next week, looking at birds and wildlife in your pictures. So take care. See you soon.